All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, January 24th, about 8:03 in the AM, and we are here for this week's Energy for All Alaska Task Force. And we have as our esteemed guest, Miss Jamie Hansen. I believe you're the president now over at Information Insights.
Yes, principal and CEO.
Madam President and CEO, as well as the rest of the team with Solarize Fairbanks, here to give us an update relative to their activities. All right, well, so without further ado, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for coming.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. And just to make sure everyone can see the screen and hear me okay?
We hear you okay, but right now the screen just says loading.
Let me just X out and try again. Sorry about that.
Okay.
It's a little early in the morning for tech issues.
When you first pulled it up, I could see a PowerPoint.
Can you see it now?
No. Are you sharing the right screen?
I am. It says that my screen sharing is paused, and I don't know if that's something that I have done because I clicked resume and I don't know.
Make sure you have co-host. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and remove co-host and re-up you.
Okay, sorry about that, and thank you.
No. This ain't our first time at the rodeo. Let's see. Although admittedly, they expect you to know a whole lot after just one time at the rodeo. Let's see.
It always works perfectly until you're trying to do it for real, and then it never seems to work right.
Just blame me. I'm bad with technology.
Okay. I think it is not working when I go to full screen, but when I'm in this view, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Interesting. When I go to present, it doesn't let me. It says it pauses when I click to make the presentation full screen.
It's okay. Why don't we go ahead and use just the the edit version.
That sounds good. You all will see what's coming next, so you'll know how much more we have to go.
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks again. And yeah, tech challenges are never fun, especially at 8 a.m. But we are excited to be here and share about what Solarize Fairbanks is and what we are focusing on this year. So to start, we always like to acknowledge the lands that we work on. So we wanted to take a minute this morning to acknowledge and really respect the Indigenous leadership and stewardship of the Lower Tanana Dene lands, which is where most of us are here in the interior. So we acknowledge these lands are unceded, ancestral, and tribal lands of people who have been here for much longer than us, and that we are just working and living on these native lands. And next, some introductions. I will let everyone introduce themselves as they start speaking for different sections of the presentation. But for those of you that I don't know, my name is Kinsley Duffler. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Energy Justice Organizer for Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition. And as you can see and might know, Solarize Fairbanks really is a team effort, and everyone else will give a brief intro as they start talking. And for today's presentation, we will start by going over a little bit of the basics: who, what, and how Solarize Fairbanks runs. We will share some information about Solarize Bright, which is a new program to support nonprofit organizations. We'll talk a little bit about the financial info and some discounts that Solarize brings to participants. And then at the end, we'll have plenty of time for questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to go on and ask those verbally or in the chat, but we will have time at the end as well for anything that wasn't answered. So to start, what is Solarize Fairbanks and what are we doing? As mentioned, Solarize Fairbanks is a very collaborative coalitional effort among different organizations, including Information Insights, the Alaska Center, Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition, Native Movement, and the Alaska Center for Energy and Power. And our mission is really that we are a community-led initiative. We are striving to make solar and energy efficiency more equitable, accessible, and affordable to all residents in the interior. This takes a lot of people, a lot of brains, a lot of work to make this happen. And the way that we are operating to achieve this mission and to really work towards more equity and access for clean energy is through three main programs. First, we have the maybe traditional campaign for solar PV panels. This is on residential and commercial spaces. This is probably our largest program and has been, how Solarize started. So that's the solar PV campaign. We also have an energy efficiency campaign, again, for residential and commercial spaces. We will be sharing more about energy efficiency for 2023 in the coming months, so stay tuned. And then the third and newer program is Solarize Bright, which stands for Building Resiliency for the Interior. And this is a community fundraising campaign that really is working to support nonprofit organizations. And so we will be going into a lot more information about both Solarize Bright and the campaign for solar PV panels. And so with that, I will hand it over to Alyssa to talk about the Solarize PV model.
All right, thanks, Kensley. So this is pretty much how Solarize works. And this model is not new. It's a model that has been used throughout the nations with variations here and there. And for folks who have been following us since the beginning, back in 2018, 2019, we spent almost, I want to say, a year really looking at this model and how we wanted it to work and what was going to work best for Fairbanks, which was, which has and continues to be a process. So of course, you have the campaign team, which is the four of us. Our job is to really support the campaigns going on, communicate that, decide when timelines on. We're really just the back piece of the logistical part of the campaigns and the coalitions. So that is what we do. We are, the grease behind the machine. We have the vetting committee, which in the past used to be selection committees. And essentially what that job is to vet the installers who are interested in participating in the Solarize campaigns, asking all the important questions in terms of pricing, quantity, quality of materials, customer service, any sort of give back or any sort of perks that they may have, any needs that the communities might have in terms of systems, in terms of placement, things of that nature. That's what that vetting community is doing. And we are actually in that process right now. So that's their job, is to select the best one for the community. And that's where our next part comes into the vetted installers who are responsible for the installations, but they're also responsible for a lot of the data that we get as the campaign team. They're the ones who are that we are also communicating with the solarizers about and making sure that that happens back and forth nice and smoothly. And then on the sort of my left, perhaps your right, we have the solar ambassadors. And what those folks are doing for us is these are dedicated people within the community who really want to get their neighborhood up and running with solar. They're going out, reaching out to their neighbors saying, hey, there's this really cool program. I want to get some solar. If we do it together, it'll be cheaper. And we could also probably get maybe a little perk of, hey, I live on College Road. I really want to solarize Peta Place, for example. I want to help them get some, some more energy. And if we get, 10 folks and we all buy like 70 kilowatts total, maybe the vetted installer can be like, yeah, I can give you a, discounted system for that place, whatever it is. So they're the folks really trying to, continue to push in their neighborhoods and make sure that everybody can have a chance in solarizing if they choose. Can go to the next one there. Oh,
Actually,
sorry.
if you don't mind holding on, I'm glad you got there. So again, part of this is leveraging economies of scale on a smaller degree. Again, the cost of putting solar panels, equipment, and the labor on one house, as opposed to several houses where someone can come, they move up, They've got, they might have gotten some discounting on the panels themselves, because instead of getting 1 or 2, they're getting 10 or 15 or 20. Is that correct? That's really
Yeah,
what
I
we're
mean,
talking about with Solarize.
that's definitely the idea, and how the model has worked in the past and in other places. What really drives down the cost for installers is having a lot of really dense areas of interest where an installer can do their little thing here in this neighborhood, do their little thing in that neighborhood, and they don't have to really travel. Really here in Fairbanks, we weren't really seeing that being really the driver for costs coming down. I mean, it's easier for the installer if they have like 20 people in one area, but really where we were seeing the cost instead was around materials. So that's why this year we're changing. We're not really focusing that much on areas, in particular, although that is something that we will still try to do for the Give Back Pledge, which we'll talk about a little bit more as the incentive. Really, what is going to be a bigger driver beyond being near somebody else is the 30% ICT tax credit that is for your installations or your energy efficiency upgrades for your property. So that's going to be a really big change this coming year. Again, we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. Also that we have open registration. So it used to be that you had to get 10 people in your neighborhood to be considered a Solarize campaign and area. And then you would work with your neighbors and the installer on those boundaries. This year, we're not doing that. It's area wide. So if you're interested, you can just sign up. We'll figure out where you are depending on the address you give us, and then we'll go from there. So that's also a really big change, but we will talk about that in a little bit. The last part of this slide, of course, in the middle of all of this is the Solarizer. They are the folks who make this possible. We say every year that, Solarize exceeds our expectations. When we first did this, we were not expecting the kind of interest and the drive that this community had for it. We were expecting, like, I don't know, 15 people at that first kickoff meeting, and there was over 150 people. And every year it continues to grow and expand beyond our expectations. So, without the Solarizer, this doesn't exist, and it continues to exist because we know that people want this to happen. And we're happy to help facilitate that need. And go to the next one here.
Actually, if I may, sorry, we're an interactive group. Are we going to touch a little bit more on later in the presentation? I see under vetted installers, not just the installation, but data management.
Mm-hmm.
So are we going to touch on that a little more further in the presentation?
I guess what's your question around that?
Sure. That it's not just the installation of the equipment. Again, that it sounds like there's a bit of a research component or a data collection component.
I guess really what we mean by this slide is that they're the folks that are, we rely really heavily on information that's gathered in terms of the Solarizer. So, how many people got contracts and projects, how many kilowatts that was. We already have the information of what kind of panels they use through the vetting process. So that'll be in the request for proposal already. So us, the vetting committee, other Solarizers, they'll know that throughout the process. So that's really what that part is about in terms of how the system's working or how many kilowatts that person is producing. That really comes from the Solarizer if they share that with us, and we may reach out to them, and we do a participation survey at the end of each campaign for folks to voluntarily share that information. So that's really what more we meant by data collection in that slide.
And Alyssa, may I jump in really quick?
Sure.
And Joma, I'm not sure if you're also referring to what we have under the Solarizer under assessments. which is where I think that may be the research part that you're referring to. So solar installers do free site assessments on each home or commercial entity to really talk with the individual to find out their goals, what type of system they're looking for, and then look at is what is solar going to produce if it were on your rooftop, in your yard, or on some other kind of facility on your property. And as Alyssa was saying, that has there's certainly been some technology advances in terms of what any installer, frankly, can gather from existing data. And in the past couple of years, the installer, which has been Renewable Energy Systems, has done a mix of on-site assessments and asking each individual to send in an information form so they can kind of start off with a set of information and then potentially go and do the site assessment to refine. So that's just another piece of this, which is part of any solar install process.
Okay. I was actually thinking a little more on the back end. I had like say CCHRC in mind, because what they were doing and are doing is a bit of testing, performance testing. You have nameplate, but then you have how things actually perform in this environment. I was also thinking about Gnome when they did their first wind installation. And again, you had the manufacturer had talked about capacity and capacity factors, but it was a bit different when they actually were out there in Gnome, in that weather, with those winds, that kind of thing. So it was more the back end.
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, this has not been so far a research project. The goal has really been to provide commercially available, tried and tested technology. And that's where ASAP has really stepped in to review the technology that's been offered by installers. And they have, their different solar testing locations. And Chris Pike, who's the one who's really led the charge of that, has been the one advising the Solarize effort here in Fairbanks and in Anchorage and Matsu. And so we benefit from that research, but this is not a research project. Our goal is truly to offer highest quality, commercially tested technology.
And deployment support. Okay, outstanding. Thank you.
Great. So why do a Solarize campaign? Because, the question is, well, I can always just do solar by myself. Well, you totally can, but there's definitely some perks to doing it this way. The first one is the give back part of it. And this has really evolved over the years. This year, we are asking not solarizers, in participating installers to have some sort of give back program within their RFP. So whether that looks like a certain percentage that will be donated to a community, a neighborhood, a nonprofit, a, emergency service entity of some nature that provides something for the community, whether it is helping other folks in the neighborhood be able to get their systems more affordably, whether it's some sort of collaboration between the installer and, let's say, a school, something that gives back, because we, again, recognize that, a lot of renewable energy is only as accessible as it is affordable. And even with a lot of the different grants and tax credits, there's still a lot of barriers to getting solar. So this is one way that we are working with installers and solarizers to sort of break some of those barriers, especially for entities, businesses, whoever. That really provides a service for our community to get a break on their energy needs and be able to participate in the program as well. The second part is that is the support aspect of it. A lot of what is also a barrier to Solarize is the information that people have access to, and somebody to really walk them through the process of how this could work. And I think that that's one of the biggest stressors when somebody is considering solar is, how do I figure out pricing? Who are good installers that I can reach out to? What does technology look like at this point? A lot of that, you really have to know where to go and who to talk to in order to get that information. We have an open door policy. So we want to make sure that all the information that is around solar, renewable energy, energy efficiency is available to you, whether you get a contract or not. And I think that that's really been the one piece that's been helpful, regardless of whether somebody goes with their contract or not. The third is investing in clean energy. We know that this is a budding and growing industry in Alaska, and we want to make sure that that happens in a good way and the right way for Fairbanks. So when people take that chance on Solarize, they're also building the industry that we have here in Fairbanks. We know that it's still budding. We know that there's still a long way to go. We don't really have a lot of installers in the state that do specifically residential, but because of not just the Solarize program, but a lot of other community-led initiatives around clean energy, a lot of businesses are starting to see that there is a market and there is a need for it. And that industry is starting to shift in that way. So that's really exciting to see. And we are really excited to be a part of it, to say, this is how we want it to be done in an equitable, accessible, and affordable way. Because the transition will happen, but will it happen in a just way? Probably not, unless you ask for it. So that's really what that piece is about. And of course, towards the end of it, you all call the shots. It's your decision of whether you sign that contract or not. It's your decision of what that system looks like or not, right? And it's also your decision of who installer you choose for your particular project. We want solarizers to choose whatever works for them. We are really just here to make sure that that process happens in a good way. We can go to the next one. Where we have been so far, not counting this year because we're still very much in baby stages right now, we have over 10 communities and neighborhoods that have solarized, from places from Denali all the way to Chena Ridge area, which we kind of called Chena Loop. It was a couple of different neighborhoods over there: Goldstream, Astor, Farmers Loop several times, Still Creek, and folks over there thinking about doing it again. So we've really expanded the interest in the communities that have gone forward with the campaign. That is over 160 homes and businesses overall. And we are probably closer to 150 kilowatts purchased. And the reason why that number is a little bit higher, we can go to the next slide, is that last year we worked with our preferred installer, Renewable Energy Systems, to do a solar pledge. And in their RFP, they had essentially promised that for every kilowatt purchased and installed, they would do a percentage of a give back donated system in each community. So you'll see a list there. For Farmers Loop, that was Mushers Hall. They've been installed for a little bit, and so that was, I want to say that was a 70 kilowatt neighborhood, for example. So Mushers Hall worked it out with Res, and they were donated around 7 kilowatts. So it kind of worked in that way for for every kilowatt produced, they would get a percentage back in the donated system of how big it was. And there was actually a family that actually won the solar pledge out in North Pole when we did it. The bread line for downtown, they're actually installed. They got their final engineering done 2 weeks and some change ago, just before the new year. And that was really exciting to see. Tri-Valley School, I think, is getting their final engineering done, and they should be up and running. And then Chena Fire Goldstream has their installation as well. So that is approximately 30 kilowatts installed, all donated, and some of it purchased, but about 30 kilowatts. So that kind of ticks it up, and it was really really beautiful to see the community come together, choose and pick who they really wanted that donated system to go through. You can go to the next one there.
Actually, so that from that last slide, that's double cool.
Yeah.
Both the fact that you could again choose to donate some power, but also hearing that this work can continue into the winter time.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah, I mean, winter is honestly the best time to start thinking about solar, and to start, if you're thinking about getting it done in your neighborhood, like, do it now. Honestly, we like to get people on that installer list ASAP. So right now is actually prime time to be considering if that is already in your year goals. We can go to the next slide there, unless you had any other questions.
No, thank you. But I will remind everyone online, if you do have questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand, or you can just go ahead and take yourself off mute and fire away as I am doing, or you can go ahead and put a question or a comment in the chat box.
Great.
Thank you.
So what's new this year is, again, we're not really focusing specifically on neighborhood boundaries. We're doing area wide. So you don't need 10 people to sign up. You don't have to have 2 area organizers. You can just sign up and be considered a part of the initiative. We are doing a full area-wide vetting committee instead of smaller selection committees for each community, and that just makes the process a little bit more expedient. Also doesn't require as many volunteers as we've needed in the past. The give back program is required for participating installers, so we'll see what that process is from installers. And we are doing solar ambassadors instead of specific area organizers, just to make that volunteering piece a little bit easier. Then we can go to the next slide there. Where we're sort of at in this process right now is that we had our kickoff back in December. Our sign up link is live, and I'll put that link up in the chat here in a second. And then what is in our horizon right now is that we are actually going through our vetting process. So we're looking at RFPs from local and statewide installers. Vetting committee is going through those RFPs, and they'll make their selection. And then we're also looking at the scope and implementation of what our energy efficiency campaign for this year is going to look like. So folks who are interested in energy efficiency, that information is going to come soon. Just trying to figure out some logistics there. Can head to the next slide. This is just a QR code for folks who are in person and have a smartphone. You can scan that code. It leads right to our sign up link where you can sign up for Solarize. If not, that link is here in the chat as well. Again, if you are interested, if you know somebody who may be interested, it is open. We welcome you. Please sign up. We've made it super, super easy for you. And yeah, we are getting interest as we speak. So thank you very much. And now we're going to head into Solarize Bright campaign and what's on with that. I think I'll pass to Jamie on that.
But for the record, the QR code works great, and it is really easy and streamlined. Took me right to it.
Great. And I think before I start on to Solarize Bright, just want to see if there's any other questions on the overall Solarize campaign.
The only one I would have is RFP was referenced a couple of times, as well as, again, vetting of installers. So you mentioned res. So you have a couple of, well, at least one tried, tested, good to go installer. So you're looking to expand that pool.
Yes, I mean, that's a hope. And we've simplified the request for proposals. It's now a request for quotes, really in our effort to focus on what, sorry, there's a train coming by, what installers are good at, right? So we, simplify that to make it easier, but still provides plenty of information for our vetting committee to determine that the installer, right, is in good business standing, is offering high quality customer service and technology. And so we're excited to, right, test out this, what we hope is a simplified process for vetting the installer. But yes, Res has participated, and we are, kind of in that process right now. So we're looking to see if or who or if any other installer will be participating in 2023.
This is awesome. So again, you're substantially de-risking this for the consumer.
Yeah, and we're also, and I will say, our intent, now whether or not we have succeeded, time will tell, is to de-risk this some for the installer as well, by really focusing on installers offering competitive retail prices, and ensuring that customers are, able to access that 30% federal tax credit and apply that to a at or slightly below retail price for their solar panels, but also taking that element of the unknown for the installer in terms of what the actual price will be, which is kind of how Solarize campaigns have worked in other areas. So, our focus at this point is really on, hey, there's some great federal incentives, and let's secure a real great deal from the local installers, and then proceed so that everyone can reduce some of their risk in this interaction.
Outstanding.
Well, great. I will go ahead and jump to the Bright discussion. So Solarize Bright is a very exciting pilot program that started up in 2022. And I think it's really important to talk about how did this start. It was really due to discussions with Cold Climate Housing Research Center, NREL, with Vanessa Stevens over there, with the Solarize Fairbanks team, as well as Golden Valley Electric, and a bit later on, the North Star Community Foundation. And so this is truly a community-led and community-designed project that really addresses a need that I will say, and I think certainly Alyssa and Lisa and Kinsley can vouch for, was at the heart of initial discussions around the Solarize campaign. And that's about how do we target our efforts in ways that supports nonprofits that are providing essential services in our community, and how do we link solar to energy efficiency? Because folks love to talk about solar. They know energy efficiency is important, but you know what? It just doesn't get the likes on Facebook like solar. And so what we're doing with the Solarize Bright campaign is working with, well, we started off with 4 nonprofits and expect to continue working with them in 2023. And that's Denali Education Center, Fairbanks Senior Center, Fairbanks Neighborhood Housing Services, and Native Movement, and are working with them to do energy audits, identify what are high value energy efficiency upgrades, and then provide a standalone but related community fundraising campaign. And let's go to the next slide for a little bit more detail. So how this has worked. And I will say the energy audit and assessment process has been firmly in the CCHRC NREL camp. And that has been providing a free commercial scale energy audit, which is a big deal. And then working with the nonprofit leadership to look at the range of options for energy efficiency upgrades. And where we're at right now on that side is the completion of the energy audits, and pretty much recognition agreement on the upgrades that will be priority and the upgrades that will be done if possible. Next step for CCHRC NREL and nonprofits will be working to select construction contractors and see that construction happen, ideally in spring, summer 2023. I'm not going to vouch for that, but that's the hope. And then the part that this crew, Solarize Fairbanks, has been working on really is on supporting community fundraising, and kind of with us and with CCHRC NREL, looking at also some local grant opportunities to do that as well. And the kind of longer term goal of Solarize Bright is to continue to work with Golden Valley and see how this program can really support eventual, we hope, release of an on-bill financing program through our utility, and basically pilot or test that out in the near-ish future. And I think I'll go to the next slide. And so what's happened so far? Well, so the community fundraising campaign started in the fall. And that is operated by the North Star Community Foundation, which means that any donation goes to North Star Community Foundation. And so that is going to a 501c3 for tax purposes. And North Star Community Foundation holds those funds. And when there is a decision to go forward with a specific contractor, North Star Community Foundation will directly send all the donated funds to that contractor. So there's no middle person. There's no one taking a cut. It's going straight from the donors' pockets to the contracting work that needs to be done to do the energy efficiency upgrades. And so far we have raised just under $9,000. And so very excited about that. It's been a range of individuals and organizations, and we're in the process of asking for permission to highlight and note. And I think the three that we've heard back from so far are CSG Incorporated and the very kind and generous donations of Jimmy Fox and Paul Reichert. So, and there are others who we are excited to highlight and thank as well, but we're just waiting for approval to use their names. Another huge piece of this, and enormous kudos to Golden Valley Electric and to the Good Sense Board for granting an incredible amount of money to 3 of the nonprofits for these energy efficiency upgrades. And as I've also mentioned, another part that's completed are the energy audits. And so next steps will be really working on that, confirming the audits the recommendations that will turn into retrofits. And I'd like to, I'll pause for a sec for questions, and then my next is actually show a video so that you can hear straight from the nonprofits that are participating in this pilot program. Pause for a second.
45 minutes.
Okay, I would open up, as Ms. Hanson has done, I'll open up the floor to questions or comments before we start the video.
Yeah, this is John Davies.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me where your conversation is around on-bill financing?
Sure, and we are, it's really focused on when Golden Valley is ready to see about using participants in this program, and also the feedback that we receive on the value of energy efficiency upgrades to support essentially a pilot rollout for the on-bill financing program. But that's where it's at right now.
Follow up, Doc?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Regarding the energy efficiency upgrades and really kind of scope of work, to me, solar, it seems to lean towards electric. Is that what we're really looking at as far as these energy efficiency upgrades?
Yeah, great question. No, it's not. So the energy audit is really being done to look at all aspects, right? Both, heating and electric. So looking at building envelope, very specifically. And the goal is to see in what, as it is with, most energy audits, to look where really is your bang for your buck in terms of payback, but also looking more specifically, and there is a research element on this in terms of CCHRC and REL being able to really assess savings, but looking at kind of envelope and facade upgrades as well. So it is not focused just on electric, though if we were solely focused as, having our Solarize hats on, we would, but this really is about what does each nonprofit need for their building to be, energy efficient and resilient.
Okay, I'm glad I asked. Thank you.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and go to the video. It's about, I think, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Oh,
Yes.
David, I had a question. They use this term solarizer, and I'm not sure what that is. If someone could please define that for me.
well, so when Alyssa was doing her presentation, a solarizer is basically someone who we say is participating in some way in a Solarize campaign.
But a real practical component is like the client, the person who's installing or receiving the solar.
Right. I mean, and we have a broader definition, right? Someone does not need to have contracted and put down a down payment or gotten the solar PV on their rooftop to be a member of this community campaign. There are solar ambassadors. There are, individuals who are, right, promoting and talking about, the importance of community action. There are individuals who have gone through in previous years the energy efficiency portion, but not done solar. So we really like to use that term broadly for anyone who has been engaged in the Solarize campaign.
Thank you. Good question. Ooh, okay, let's see a video.
Great, thank you. Oh, Kinsley, we can't hear.
Okay, I unmuted myself. Can you hear me talking?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it might be when you share screen, you have to click that you want to share your sound. So you might have to unshare and then reshare so that we can hear the video.
All right, I am looking at that now. Share sound. Okay, let's try again.
Been partnering with the National Park Service since 2016 on the Denali Zero Landfill Initiative. So focusing on sustainability, which is, I thought, just a really great dovetail with Solarize Bright and the need to, make these retrofits within our facilities to increase our energy efficiency and kind of with that eye towards sustainability.
For an organization such as us, every dollar we can save on energy means that dollar goes back to the seniors that we serve and the participants that we serve. And so bettering our energy efficiency actually makes the program as a whole more efficient.
Awesome. Thank you, Kinsley. Well,
That
let
is
me just
awesome.
ask, if anyone has any questions on that, I was glad that was able to list out some of the retrofits that look likely to happen as part of this program, but just see if there's any questions on that.
Well, I personally am really glad you're picking this up. Personally, I've been focused and writing really hard on things like the old AHFC retrofit and rebate program for residential consumers or residential homeowners. But it's, the nonprofits, that's a very important segment of our economy. So I'm glad, and there's lots of different ways we can find to help our neighbors. So great job.
Thank you.
I have a question on that one too.
Please, John.
Yeah, John Davies here. About, I don't remember exactly, but maybe about 10 years ago or so, Danny Powers took a shot at trying to work with nonprofits. Have you sort of dusted that off and kind of got some lessons learned from that effort?
Oh, John, I think we dust that off every 2 years. Vanessa Stevens, who is really one of the co-leaders on this, was part of that, like the Fairbanks nonprofit retrofit program. And so so that is in the back of our minds. And so we felt really lucky to see that there would be an opportunity for some Department of Energy, National Renewable Energy Labs funding to support this element of a nonprofit focused energy efficiency campaign. But I will say it feels like we are constantly looking for ways to bring that back to a much larger scale than this program right here. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Jamie, this is Ramey Wood here. I've got a firm 9 I'm going to have to peel off pretty soon, but in that conversation, I'd love to speak more and about some practicalities on how to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. And there is a QR code in. So just what's next, right? We're continuing fundraising for the current nonprofits. We are, and this is CCHRC NREL, collecting winter energy bills to really do that tracking and verifying of savings to support another future rounds of a program like this. And then we're also in the works right now to hold a Fairbanks stakeholder workshop that would be focused around energy efficiency, weatherization work, and community campaign efforts in Fairbanks. So right, looking how to expand this, what to add. And our hope is that event would be held in February, March, and there's a lot more to come on that. And we would love to be able to share this with FEDC and get this out to this group as well once there's a few more details like date, venue, and agenda. So that's on its way. Let's go to the next slide. And Jomo, it's funny, this kind of gets to some of what you were saying in terms of, right, like the community interest, both from individuals and organizations. And so I just wanted to put out there that for us, there's always help needed. From the Solarize perspective and from our energy efficiency campaign, the Solarize Bite project, there is always a need for capacity and funding. And as because of that, we are always on the lookout for opportunities. At this point, definitely have our eyes on federal grant opportunities because a lot of those are coming out, varying degrees of relevance and competitiveness, of course. And I wanted to share that there are a couple grant opportunities and actually a prize opportunity that are on our minds right now. And I just want to take a couple minutes, and then if anyone has interest in following up, I'd ask that you send Solarize Fairbanks an email, and we'll put that in the chat. One is called Buildings Up. It's a building upgrade prize. Rumor has it that some of these prizes are actually a little bit easier to apply for and less competitive than some of the other grant opportunities. And the purpose of this one is really to deliver scalable, replicable upgrades to buildings in low and moderate income households and underserved commercial, nonprofit, and public buildings. So really centering, and that's actually the name of it, equity centered. So really centering equity, access to these energy efficiency campaigns to underserved communities. And if each winner would receive $400,000 cash prize, and that does have a rolling deadline with a final deadline of April 2023. So that's something that's in our minds right now. And let's go to the next slide. Another one.
Can I have a question on that one? I'm sorry to keep.
Yeah, of course.
So how does that distinguish from the current low-income weatherization program?
Great question. I would say that it has different standards about who could participate. it would have a different organizer, right? Interior weatherization could be part of it, but really sort of the multi-stakeholder group is key. And I would say it would have a more narrow mandate to specifically look at, right, specific types of building upgrades for specific buildings, both household and commercial. So a good amount of overlap, but also I would say a narrower mandate than interior weatherization's current one. So just think of it as, right, building out, beefing up existing services.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the next one is Clean Energy to Communities program, and Kensley's been doing some work on this one and brought it to our attention. And this is another, right, multi-stakeholder team looking at connecting, and we can certainly name who this would be in our community, right? Local governments, electric utilities, community-based groups who are really looking at modeling and testing tools at the national labs, which lucky us, we do have one in town. And actually one of the projects noted on this website was work that CCHRC NREL did in combination with a larger NREL team, I think in Colorado. And this one is a little bit more specified. It's not necessarily a cash prize. They have 3 different buckets around technical assistance and varying degrees of cash assistance or support for renewable energy initiatives. So all of us are doing some additional digging on and actually talking with some of the funding entity contacts to really determine, is this appropriate for the Fairbanks area, and is this worth our time? Because it's right, there's a number of things to consider when going after federal grants, of course. And I think that's all I just wanted to put in front of you today. Are there any other questions on Bright before this gets handed over to Lisa?
Any questions from the group? Okay, thank you. Proceed. Great to see you, Miss Lisa.
Hi. I'll try to make this quick since we only have about 5 minutes left, and I know Jamie needs to hop off and Kensley needs to hop off also at 9 o'clock. And we're jumping back more to back to the Solarize campaign a little bit, but you can go on to the next. And this is just some ways of financing this, and because as was mentioned earlier, one of the big components of this is to make it affordable and accessible. And there are different things. We've spoken quite a lot about energy efficiency. There are definitely some energy efficiency experts on this call, so you'll understand that undertaking energy efficiency in your home or whichever building is really critical to properly sizing your system. And get on to some of the others. There's some really exciting things with the federal tax credit. It was due to sunset, and with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, it's come back to life and will be at 30% tax credit for, I believe, another 10 years now, which is super exciting. And the other component of that is really exciting is that there's now an element that allows nonprofits to get a 30% rebate, essentially. That was not something that was available to nonprofits prior to that because they don't have tax liability, and so they can't get a tax credit and would rely on things like power purchase agreements and third parties in states that allowed that. With the new system, there's opportunity for nonprofits to get basically a payback, it's called, or a direct pay rebate of up to 30% for solar as well as for battery storage. So that's super exciting. And then another component is a green addendum, which is really comes into play when you're looking to sell your home, and by adding value to the appraiser can add value through a green addendum to your home based upon the upgrade that that renewable energy such as solar has added to it. Next.
We've actually had a challenge with that in the past. Appraisers properly valuing energy efficiency upgrades and things of that nature. They've been allowed, but it just hasn't worked out as well as it should have here in the interior.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's growing, and AHFC is looking into that. There are others in the team that know a little bit more about that. And then there's loans. I mean, many of you are probably familiar with them. The Alaska Housing Finance Corporation programs have been brought up a couple of times in terms of weatherization. And I'm also one who would love to see the rebate program come back. I participated in the weatherization program as a cabin dweller back in 2011, and then the rebate program as a new homeowner back in 2015 before it was eliminated, and they're both really valuable to the community. But there's also some, the energy efficiency loans through Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. There's home equity lines of credit of varying sizes, consumer loans, and home improvement loans that are, and I'll just keep rushing through these if we can get to the next, because we're running out of time. And then also, if you're a business, this is really awesome. And this is money that's often underutilized here in Alaska. The USDA Rural Energy for America program is available for for-profit businesses, and where they can get 25% coverage of the costs of their energy efficiency upgrade or renewable energy installation. And that's you have to put the system in place and pay for it up front, but you do get reimbursed afterwards, and it's huge. And with that combined with the tax credit, businesses can save a tremendous amount of money. And so I will just leave it at that. And I know Kensley needs to jump off, and others do, and allow some time for Q&A. Thanks.
That was a great note, though. That very last slide, the USDA rural. It's always a question whether or not a community of our size qualifies for those kinds of things. It's nice to see that's an opportunity.
Yeah, the only part of Alaska that's not considered rural is the municipality of Anchorage. The rest of Alaska, including Fairbanks, qualifies.
Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know we were that tiny.
Compare. It's all about comparison. All right. Well, okay. So you say we're at the end of the presentation? All right. Well, I would open the floor up for questions. I did get a note. Mr. Soley is a director with our Golden Valley Electric Association, and does have a note regarding on-bill financing, I believe. Rick, do you want to just go ahead and fire away? Oh, he's like a teenager. He sent me a text, and now I try to call him. He doesn't answer. Okay. Okay. Well, if he comes back around, he can chime in. All right. Well, I would open up the floor for questions. The great presentation. When I saw the news story, I wanted to reach out. I'm really glad I did. So this has been about a month and a half, 2 months in the offing, but I really appreciate that you all have that we had the time. Jean, I see your hands up. If you're talking, Jean, no, we're not hearing you. Okay. All right. Well, again, I would open up the floor to any questions, further comments.
Jomo?
Yes, there we are. Hey, Jean.
Sorry, I had to put my headset on. Hey, yeah, I'm the one that actually sent you the note there when I saw that Rick Soley was on, but maybe he's just not prepared to make a comment on behalf of the utility. I have been monitoring the on-bill, having been involved in the passage of that legislation. Golden Valley, the board previously pledged money to implementing a trial on-bill program. However, it got sort of put on hold, from my understanding, while they went through the software update with regards to their users, the interface with their users. That, of course, just really kicked off the beginning of the year. They're in the process of getting that all ironed out. and I know myself, it was pretty seamless to get, reestablish my account under the new software. So I'm hoping then that once they get any little bugs with that ironed out, they will then have a plan on how they want to move forward again with that previous pledge of money to investigate and support a pilot program for on-bill.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
And Gene, that thanks for jumping in there. Yeah, Jomo, that wasn't my question, and I would, I think Gene summarized it. We still in process, I guess, would be the short answer. It has been a priority of Golden Valley, and but as you know, we've been reviewing it internally to ensure the program works effectively. And I think that's, I don't know that I'd elaborate much more at this point. But maybe there's a follow-up that would be a proper thing to do with the committee.
All right.
And this is not just add just one bit. I don't work for GVA, so I'm not on the board. So, I hope I'm not speaking out of line here, but have been involved in conversations regarding on-bill financing for some time. And Jean did mention the pilot program, and that's internal funds from GVEA. That's $200,000 that they will be committing to do a pilot program prior to, hopefully, for those of us who want to see on-bill financing, prior to then trying to getting funding through the USDA, which offers grants to rural utilities at a 0% interest for on-bill financing. So hopefully that will come online this year. And I imagine that those of you on the board of directors will hear some of us ask questions about that as the year progresses.
All right. Well, I wonder if Miss Lisa, Miss Alyssa, if you would take a note back to the rest of the team. Again, this has been a great presentation. Really appreciate both the presentation, but also the work that's being done that justifies the presentation. When everyone is ready for the next update, if you all will please reach out so that I can schedule it, be much appreciated, particularly as we progress with the Solar Bright, that new component. Very, very curious to hear how that starts to work out and anything we can do to assist. So much appreciated. And again, this has turned out to be a very, very timely discussion. Of course, I didn't know when we were trying to schedule this, what word was going to be coming down from the EPA and how, if it were to be implemented in full, it would be impacting things like our electric rates. And so anything that folks could tap into to help reduce their demand, of course, is going to reduce their cost. So again, much appreciated. Well, all right, everybody, it is just past the 9 a.m. hour. Are there any final questions or comments? All right, well, hearing none, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting for today. Haha, that's the most formal thing I've said in one of these meetings in a while.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a little forward note for the gang here. I just want to make sure I'm identifying the right guest. We do have a meeting scheduled for next week. Yes. So I have, again, continuing with this discussion relative to cost of energy, and again, response to the EPA's potential denial of some of the parts of the Sirius SIP. I do have scheduled the FNSB with a update relative to the wood stove and heating appliance changeout programs. So that is what's on docket for next week. Again, January 31st, our guests are going to be Steve Hoke with the Air Quality Division of the FNSB to give us an update relative to the changeout program. And just so you know, I have also already scheduled for February 7th, the first meeting of February, an update from the Interior Gas Utility, which has just had some really big news, but will be one of the keys to helping us solve our air quality challenge, I believe. Well, all right, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.
You guys have a good one.